In late May 1968, the USS Scorpion, a US Navy nuclear attack submarine, vanished in the North Atlantic while returning from a mission near the Azores. 99 crew members were on board, and the vessel carried 2 nuclear torpedoes. When it failed to arrive in Norfolk, Virginia, the Navy launched one of the largest search operations in peacetime history. After months of scanning the seafloor, the wreck was finally located 10,000 feet below the surface, crushed and scattered over the seabed. The official explanation pointed to a torpedo malfunction, possibly one that armed itself and detonated inside the sub. But this theory was never proven. Some retired officers believed the Scorpion was tracked and sunk by a Soviet submarine in retaliation for the mysterious loss of the Soviet sub K-129 earlier that same year. What fuels suspicion is that Navy acoustic sensors recorded strange underwater explosions just hours after Scorpion's last transmission. In February 1959, 9 young Soviet hikers led by Igor Dytlov embarked on a winter expedition across the Ural Mountains. All were experienced mountaineers, yet within 2 weeks, every one of them was dead. When rescuers found their campsite, the scene was baffling. Their tent was sliced open from the inside, their clothes left behind, and footprints led into the snow. Barefoot, half-dressed, as if fleeing in panic. Their bodies were discovered miles apart. Some had crushed skulls and broken ribs without external wounds, and one woman's tongue and eyes were missing. Radiation was detected on their clothing, and official records described the cause of death as an unknown compelling force. In 2020, Russian authorities reopened the case and blamed an avalanche, saying snow collapse forced the group to flee. But skeptics point out that the terrain's slope was too shallow, and the tent was found intact under snow, not consistent with avalanche physics. Others suspect secret military tests, parachute mines, or even psychological breakdowns caused by infrasound. 65 years later, Dyatlov Pass remains one of the most puzzling tragedies of the Cold War era. Before Yuri Gagarin became the first human officially in space, in 1961, rumours circulated that the Soviet Union had already launched and lost several cosmonauts in secret. In Italy, 2 amateur radio operators, Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordiglia, claimed to intercept distress signals from dying astronauts orbiting Earth. The recordings, broadcast worldwide, included chilling messages in Russian like, "It's getting hot," and "We are losing oxygen." Leaked documents and later testimonies suggested that early space tests before Gagarin's flight might have ended in disaster, but were erased from official records to preserve Soviet prestige. Western intelligence agencies also picked up strange signals and telemetry that didn't match any announced missions. The Soviets denied everything, claiming the recordings were fake. To this day, no physical evidence, no wreckage, no names, no flight logs has ever surfaced. Yet the mystery persists, leaving open the eerie possibility that the first humans to reach orbit were erased from history to protect a government's image. During the 1950s and 60s, at the height of Cold War paranoia, the CIA launched Project MK-Ultra, one of the most secretive and disturbing intelligence programs in US history. Its goal, to understand and control the human mind. The agency conducted hundreds of experiments using LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and even torture. Hospitals, prisons, and universities became covert laboratories. Many subjects were not volunteers. They were drugged without consent, often suffering lasting psychological damage. One of the most infamous cases was Dr. Frank Olson, a scientist who fell from a New York hotel window after being dosed with LSD by his colleagues. Some suspect he was murdered to keep him silent. When the project was exposed during Senate hearings in 1975, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered most MK-Ultra documents destroyed. Out of thousands of reports, only 20,000 financial records survived. Not enough to reveal the full scope. Historians believe the program spanned 80 institutions and at least 185 researchers. What's chilling is that many details, including the identities of victims, remain unknown. To this day, we don't know how far the CIA's mind control ambitions really went. In 1981, a KGB engineer named Vladimir Petrov, codenamed Farewell, defected and handed over thousands of top-secret Soviet documents to French intelligence. His information revealed that the KGB was systematically stealing Western industrial and technological secrets, especially from US computer firms. In response, the CIA launched a counterintelligence plan. They intentionally allowed the Soviets to steal sabotaged software. Months later, in June 1982, a massive explosion ripped through the Trans-Siberian gas pipeline, the largest non-nuclear explosion ever recorded in space. US officials later hinted that the software had caused a pressure overload, destroying part of the Soviet energy grid. However, no direct evidence ever surfaced. Declassified CIA reports remain ambiguous, and the KGB archives are sealed. Some historians argue the explosion was a simple equipment failure. Others think it was a covert cyber attack, decades before that term even existed. Agent Farewell was eventually executed by the Soviets, but his leaks reshaped Cold War espionage forever. On the night of September 26, 1983, Soviet early warning satellites suddenly detected 5 nuclear missiles launched from the United States. Red lights flashed, alarms blared, and command protocols demanded immediate retaliation. The officer in charge, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, had minutes to act. He knew that if he reported the alert as genuine, the Soviet Union would likely launch a full nuclear strike, beginning World War III. Instead, Petrov trusted his instincts. He reasoned that if the US were attacking, it would fire hundreds of missiles, not 5. He waited, and the attack vanished from the radar. Later analysis revealed that sunlight reflected off high-altitude clouds had tricked the Soviet satellite sensors. The system's engineers were never publicly blamed, and Moscow kept the incident secret for over a decade. Petrov's decision prevented potential global catastrophe. But what's still unexplained is why the satellite's fail-safe mechanisms failed so completely. On April 20, 1978, a Korean Airlines passenger jet, Flight 902, flying from Paris to Seoul, somehow veered hundreds of miles off course and entered restricted Soviet airspace near Murmansk. Soviet radar mistook it for a US spy plane. A Soviet fighter jet opened fire, killing 2 passengers and forcing the airliner to crash land on a frozen lake. The surviving 107 passengers were rescued, but the real mystery is why the aircraft strayed so far north. Officially, navigation error due to magnetic interference was blamed, but investigators noted that its path lined up closely with known US reconnaissance routes. Some theorized the plane was deliberately used for intelligence gathering under civilian cover. Others believe Soviet radar jamming or guidance manipulation was involved. The Soviets recovered the black box, but never released the recordings, even after diplomatic pressure. The pilots insisted their instruments suddenly malfunctioned. The truth remains buried in Soviet archives, and Flight 902 stands as one of the strangest civilian aviation mysteries of the Cold War. On April 2, 1979, the city of Sverdlovsk in the Soviet Union, now Yekaterinburg, experienced a sudden deadly outbreak of anthrax. Dozens fell ill within days, and livestock across several kilometers died as well. Soviet officials insisted it came from contaminated meat sold at local markets. But US intelligence analysts noticed that the deaths aligned perfectly with wind patterns downwind of a nearby military facility, Compound 19, known for biological research. Eyewitnesses described military cleanup crews and secret nighttime burials. In 1992, after the fall of the USSR, President Boris Yeltsin admitted the outbreak was caused by a laboratory accident. A clogged air filter had been removed from a production line that was aerosolizing anthrax spores for weaponization. The incident killed at least 66 people, possibly more. Western investigators later confirmed the strain matched military samples. Even so, scientists believe the full scale of the Soviet bioweapons program, which reportedly employed 60,000 people across dozens of sites, is still not fully documented. Sverdlovsk remains the only confirmed lethal release of a biological weapon during the Cold War, and one of its darkest secrets.